Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our talk, Texts on Repeat, Examining the Persistence of Assigned Course Materials. My name is Ann Shelley, and I am pleased to present today with fellow librarians at Illinois State University's Milner Library, Mallory Jallis, Julie Murphy, and Rachel Scott. Our colleague and project partner, Rachel Park, is not able to join us today. Many academic libraries' collection development policies have discouraged the acquisition of assigned textbooks, but recent trends to support textbook affordability, student success, and online learning have caused some library personnel to rethink this approach. Through recent efforts at our library to purchase available e-copies for assigned course textbooks, we became curious about title persistence, or the frequency with which a unique title is assigned across multiple semesters and within a single semester across multiple sections. So in this presentation, we'd like to provide some background and context for our textbook affordability efforts and examine several years of assigned textbook data at Illinois State University for title persistence, prevalence within fields of study, and the relationship between title persistence and specific publishers. Next slide, please. So many academic libraries have long limited textbook purchases for a variety of reasons. They're expensive, they're frequently updated, they're often ephemeral in their relevance and their appeal, and their coverage of content is often either too basic, such as recording general knowledge and not serious scholarship, or the content can be too specific to add to a library collection. In recent years, however, this perspective has shifted. The understanding of textbook affordability as an equity issue and the expanded need for support of online education programs have contributed to rethinking the academic library's role in the provision of textbooks to students. Several projects and studies have tested the viability of library purchasing and lending print textbooks, licensing assigned electronic books, and coordinating textbook swap projects, and other means of supporting students' cost-free access to assigned texts. Unfortunately, librarians' abilities to act on this philosophy are often limited. The longstanding and popular library service of placing print texts on physical course reserve has in many ways lost relevance, not only due to recent shifts toward online and hybrid instruction, but also because of single-user digital access models. Inclusive access arrangements between textbook publishers and academic institutions often allow few opportunities for involvement from the library. Next slide, please. So to set up our discussion about title persistence, let's take a look at ISU and what we've been doing to help with textbook costs as much as we can. Illinois State is a Carnegie R2 public research university with around 20,600 students. About 30% of our students are Pell eligible, 17% are first generation, and nearly 30% come from underrepresented groups. Around 160 degrees are offered from 6 colleges, and since 2017, there have been efforts at the university, library, and state of Illinois levels to address textbook affordability. ISU has a campus-wide textbook affordability committee that's part of our shared governance structure. The committee has surveyed ISU students and faculty in recent years to determine the extent to which textbook costs might be a problem for students and to learn what is important to faculty when they select course materials. Some statewide initiatives are also on our radar. Members of Illinois' Academic Library Consortium, CARLI, joined the Open Education Network in 2017. CARLI is currently in the middle of a multi-year $2 million grant from the U.S. Department of Education to support the creation of new OERs by faculty at Illinois post-secondary institutions. And the state has a task force doing work right now as part of the Illinois College Course Materials Affordability and Equitable Access Collaborative Study Act. Finally, Milner Library is engaged in textbook affordability in several ways. The library's strategic plan has language that supports open and affordable resource initiatives, and in that vein, a working group has been active for the past 1.5 years to provide opportunities for library personnel to better learn about and engage with these materials, along with promoting library services to campus in this area. A separate working group, those of us presenting today, plus our electronic resources librarian colleague, Rachel Park, has focused on increasing the library's collection of ebooks assigned as textbooks. In response to challenges magnified by COVID, we have, since fall 2020, purchased 736 unique e-textbook titles used across nearly 1,000 course sections. Each semester, we follow a workflow that begins with acquiring textbook selection data that's made publicly available by the University Registrar's Office. And it is that data, going back several years, that we examine in this presentation. And now Mallory will address how textbook affordability concerns student success at ISU.
Thank you, Anne. So yeah, at this point in the presentation, we want to offer more insight into how we see the connection between acquiring assigned course materials and the impact on student learning. Our working group very clearly identifies a relationship between student access to textbooks and student success. Beyond academic impacts like removing barriers to learning by enabling first day access to textbooks, our efforts make the college experience more affordable for our students. These personal and educational benefits are the primary motivation for the work we've been undertaking at Illinois State University. As Anne mentioned, our working group has provided e-textbooks for students for about the last 5 semesters at Illinois State. At the end of our pilot semester, we did conduct student focus groups and a survey for those in the courses using e-textbooks provided by the library. At last year's Charleston conference, we had an opportunity to share a poster about incorporating student feedback into our project. I want to reiterate some of those key takeaways and have referenced the presentation on the slide. The overall student experience with our e-textbooks was positive. The majority of feedback was that students were very grateful for the financial savings. We gleaned that the library provided e-textbooks would potentially impact the course selection of students for future semesters. A majority of our survey respondents said they would be very likely or somewhat likely to register for a future course that utilizes e-textbooks from the library. In addition to the data we gathered, we had some illuminating quotes in our open responses to the survey. One student shared, quote, "It allows me to have more money allocated to what most college students actually struggle with, like eating, housing, and mental health. I can gain peace of mind knowing that finances aren't one of the factors hindering my academic experience here at the university." End quote. Responses like this and others we gathered really illuminate the student experience and have been critical as we demonstrate the impact and value of our program at Illinois State. Next slide. I now want to focus a little bit on how we view our work fitting into the larger landscape of the open educational resource and textbook affordability advocacy. Sorry, many words there. Like many, we consider our efforts at the library of acquiring course texts on the spectrum of affordability options for students. Open education resources are part of the spectrum, and as Anne outlined earlier, our library and our campus have various groups advocating for the adoption of OER. We truly view our work as increasing awareness of how low and no cost options can drastically benefit our students. As I mentioned earlier, during our pilot semester for e-textbooks, we collected data from students and faculty that participated. With that data and evidence, we've been able to advocate for funding from campus partners. We've grown from a $10,000 one-time funding for our initial semester to securing about $65,000 in grant funds for a few semesters from our Associate Vice President for Student Success. All of this funding and support on campus is really raising the library's profile as a partner in textbook affordability and student success on campus. This cultivates more opportunities to increase awareness about all ranges of textbook affordability, including OER. In addition to raising this awareness, it also has us considering the long-term implications of acquiring the course materials. For all the reasons that Anne mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, we really wanted to explore the efficacy of spending more funds on textbook acquisition. And now I'll turn it over to Julie to dig into more of our data relating to that question.
Thank you, Mallory. As Mallory just said, we wanted to make sure that we were spending campus money responsibly when purchasing e-textbooks by analyzing how much reuse the typical textbook we purchase might see. Unfortunately, when we reached out to the registrar's office to inquire about this data, we were informed that they had switched to a new system in 2015 and no longer had any historical textbook data prior to that point. After following several leads with Campus IT, we ultimately were able to recover the textbook data all the way back to 2012, but unfortunately, we didn't get it in time to include it in this current analysis. We will definitely be incorporating this data in the future and sharing it out in another format. In some departments, instructors submit their textbook selections to an administrative assistant who handles the data entry, while in others, individual instructors enter everything themselves. Unfortunately, this results in instructors entering their data in a highly inconsistent way and sometimes even the most important of the required fields, such as title, author, or ISBN, get left blank. Some will enter the same ISBN every time they select a particular work from semester to semester, but others appear to randomly Google the ISBN every time they enter it, sometimes entering the hardcover, other times the paperback or the loose leaf edition, and sometimes even substituting an ebook ISBN while indicating in the text that the print copy will be used. This means our analysis would be inaccurate if we only tracked a work by ISBN. In order to actually capture the persistence of a work from semester to semester, I took several weeks to go through the entire 54,000 line spreadsheet by hand and group together the ISBNs that applied to the same edition of a work in different physical formats. I also had to group all editions of the same work together and fill out critical missing information such as the book's name or edition number before I could start analyzing the descriptive statistics in Excel. This took multiple weeks. Next slide, please. After analyzing the approximately 54,000 text assignments made during the 22 semesters we examined, there are about 11,200 unique ISBNs. Because there were often multiple ISBNs that appeared in the data equating to the same edition of a text, there were actually approximately 10,000 unique editions, meaning that about 11% of the unique editions have more than one ISBN associated with it. Because we knew that we wanted to track the persistence of a work from semester to semester, we also had to categorize each unique ISBN by work. So, for example, 6 separate editions of Constitutional Law for a Change in America were assigned over the 22 semesters. Similarly, there were frequently multiple editions of fiction works or classical works assigned. Every edition of Frankenstein was categorized as the same work, although there were many unique editions with different editing and commentary. Classical works like Plato's Republic were assigned with multiple different translations. These were all considered the same work, but separate editions. We also tracked the formatting of the editions associated with each ISBN. For example, while the 6th edition of Organizational Behavior was assigned to many sections of MQM 221, some sections were assigned a hardcover copy, while some were assigned a bundle of the hardcover plus an access code, and still others were assigned only the access code for the electronic copy. Next slide, please. At first, we were very surprised by how many editions were only used once, 45%. When we saw that 44% of all works were only used once as well, that number started to make a little more sense. It appears that there's a high rate of professors trying out new works. It may take them several semesters to settle on one that they like. When they find a work that they like, they tend to stick with it for an average of 5.5 semesters. Sometimes this means using the same edition of the same work for many years, but if a work is being assigned more than one semester, on average, the edition is updated every 4.6 years. Next slide, please. The frequency with which different sections use the same textbook is obviously heavily influenced by the assignment of professors. When a professor is teaching multiple sections of the same class, they will almost certainly use the same textbook for all sections they're teaching. Unfortunately, the file the registrar's office was able to provide us was lacking any information about professor assignment, so this influence is impossible for us to track. We know that our institution departmental policies on textbook selection vary widely by department. Here we have 2 example screenshots from a pivot table tracking the use of a work by section number within each class in fall 2015. In some departments like history or English, the textbook choice is completely up to the individual professor. And as you can see, different sections are often using vastly different works. In other departments like accounting and some of the sciences, all sections of a class must use the same work, and the work is selected by a committee instead of the individual professor teaching that section. Next slide, please. Here we have a similar pivot table tracking the uses of individual editions within each class over the course of multiple semesters. We found that when we differentiate by edition of the work, we see that classes with many sections often don't switch to the new edition all at once. Some professors will switch as soon as the new edition is released, while others take a semester or two before they change editions. Now Rachel will talk a little bit more about trends that we found in the data and implications.
Thank you, Julie. I'll take a moment to reiterate that we're still in the exploratory phase of our project, but nevertheless, there were some interesting trends that we are investigating and that we thought might be of interest to this audience. In our data, as Julie noted, the publisher information is very often abbreviated, entered with numerous mistakes, and so those inconsistencies make it challenging to draw conclusions. Nonetheless, preliminary analysis shows that assigning texts from some major commercial publishers seems to be on the decline at Illinois State University. The decline prompted the question of whether fewer texts are being assigned overall, whether there is more diversity of publishers being assigned, or if something entirely else is going on. The answer to all these questions is likely yes. So on the whole, the number of texts assigned per semester has declined over the past 8 years. The number of publishers fell from 3,554 in fall 2016, to 3,022 in fall 2022. Of these, however, the number of unique publishers has remained relatively stable, ranging from 432 to 448. So the percentage of unique texts in 2016 and 2018 was 12%, and in 2022, it is up to 14%. This suggests that even as the number of assigned texts has decreased, the variety of materials and diversity of publishers has not. Several factors likely play into this, most notably COVID and the need for digital availability of learning materials. But we're also hearing concerns about traditional textbooks from our faculty. One music professor summarized their main complaints about traditional textbooks by saying, quote, "Textbooks are expensive, one size fits all, conservative, more about content than critical thinking, and you can't change them," end quote. We're also exploring the assignment of access codes over the past 22 semesters. We expected that these might have dramatically increased over the past 8 years, but that is not necessarily the case, at least not consistently so. In 2015, access code or print plus access code equaled about 10.5% of all assigned texts. In fall 2022, they make up about 13% of all assigned texts. So there has been an increase, but it's been somewhat minimal. When we investigate the use of codes at departmental levels, we do see some conflicting trends that we'd like to share. So in communications, the use of access codes increased to around 50 to 60% of assigned text beginning in the fall of 2019. As you can see on this slide, prior to fall 2019, almost no access codes had been assigned. This trend is echoed in other areas, including business, where print plus access code was assigned in the most recent semester, while in previous semesters, it had been almost exclusively print. In chemistry, the department had been averaging about 10 to 20% access codes for quite some time, but this fall semester, suddenly 40% of their texts were access code only. We're also seeing the opposite. So in several departments that had previously heavily used access codes, we've seen that they've backed off in recent years. Kinesiology and recreation, for example, previously assigned 30 to 40% of their text as access code or print plus access code. Since fall 2019, however, they've not assigned more than a handful per semester. Courses and majors with high title persistence are another area that we will investigate once our data are all cleaned up. The table shows titles that have been assigned for over 20 semesters during the period under investigation. That's on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, you'll see titles that are used in the hundreds of sections. So we've already addressed much of the low-hanging fruit by licensing the frequently assigned texts that are available as ebooks with unlimited or concurrent user licenses. But these data may also suggest opportunities to discuss with faculty alternate texts that are available for the library to license. So one thing that we wanted to communicate is that there is indeed a market for assigned texts. As Mallory noted, we've been able to secure an increasingly large sum of money to spend on assigned texts over the past year and a half we've been working together. We encourage publishers to make frequently assigned texts available to license as ebooks on terms that support course usage. For example, making them available DRM-free and/or with unlimited users licenses. We have heard from a number of faculty that they increasingly use digital texts in courses, and that was especially the case during remote learning related to COVID-19. In student and faculty focus groups and surveys, we repeatedly heard that frequent edition updates may drive faculty and students towards older editions and used texts, and this is likely at odds with publisher sale goals. Student data from our research and other studies have shown that high prices inspire a variety of creative methods to avoid purchasing texts, such as sharing, illegally downloading, purchasing used copies in different versions, and other strategies. So we ask publishers to consider librarians' concerns around direct-to-student models, including individual subscriptions, ebooks with access codes, and inclusive access models. Such models prevent libraries and other campus support systems from providing alternate and affordable access to assigned materials for those who truly need it. Many of you may have seen these tweets from Karen Cohn, who serves as collections analysis librarian at Temple University. This demonstrates why librarians can't count on ebook subscriptions to support student access to assigned materials. Wiley did respond by restoring access to these titles into 2023, but the situation highlighted the lack of input librarians have in ensuring the availability of assigned materials to their students. It has also been our experience that several frequently assigned texts are unavailable for library licensing, or at least licensing that supports multiple simultaneous users. Given that librarians often have funds to license assigned materials, we ask that we ask what opportunities are there for publishers and aggregators to work with librarians on mutually agreeable and sustainable licensing terms. In our preliminary investigation, we've determined that more than half of all assigned texts were used more than once in the period studied. The relatively high persistence of assigned texts at ISU compounds the value of the ebooks we've licensed, both for the impacted students and for our collections. We acknowledge that collection development is a highly contextual activity, and we offer a few considerations from our experience. Systematically investigating all assigned texts at your university may be a fruitful step in promoting textbook affordability. It has certainly taught us a great deal about some of the challenges and opportunities in this space. We've found that licensing frequently assigned text delivers great value, regardless of whether our calculations focus on cost per use or potential student savings. Because of concerns that assigned texts might not be of sufficiently high quality, we have also attempted to systematically investigate the assigned texts that we have licensed using a quality-based metric for collection assessment. Using resources for college libraries, we compared the assigned texts that we had licensed to ebooks acquired via our patron-driven acquisitions program and via firm order. The assigned texts had a higher percentage of outstanding academic text designations and resources for college libraries. And there's a citation to the study that we published on that factor. And finally, working with campus units to select and fund the acquisition of assigned text has generated goodwill for our library. When library collections are perceived as a service in support of the curriculum, librarians are appreciated as partners in education and affordability. So we'll conclude by summarizing our next steps. As noted, our data are messy, and we will continue to clean up the data and integrate earlier data. We continue to have conversations, sometimes somewhat awkward, with publishers and aggregators around affordability. We hope that these small acts of trust will lead to more opportunities for our students. Library and university administration have appreciated our focus on collecting and assessing data. Grant funds from the State Board of Higher Education have been invested in assigned texts because we have shown their impact on student learning and affordability. Collecting and assessing data also provides us with opportunities to share out findings at conferences and hear from colleagues about their approaches. We welcome your questions, your input, and your ideas for collaboration. Thank you so much for your attention, and we look forward to hearing from you.